Hey guys, Mikey coming at you. Today we are gonna take a look at how you can turn your yellow, cracked, old headlights into new, clear, pristine ones on a budget, less than $100. You can go from this to this. Let's take a look. If you guys are like me, your vehicle's a little bit older, still running great, but you know the headlights aren't working like they should. They're pretty yellowed, pretty faded. The lenses are a bit cracked and they've got some spider cracks, even a few deeper ones in there. They're just not shining light like they should be and not super usable if I'm being completely honest. And so for less than $100 and a little bit of elbow grease, we can make them not only usable again, but look like a completely modern headlight. So stay tuned. This is gonna be a little bit of a step-by-step of how you can get your own results on a really good budget. So depending on how in-depth you want to go with your headlight restoration, you're going to need a few different products. Obviously to do the lens, you're going to need some sandpaper and a headlight restoration kit. I used the Cerakote ceramic headlight restore kit and it works fantastic. Highly recommend this. It's about 16 bucks. You can get it from Walmart or Amazon. I also had some extra sandpaper so that I could sand a little bit deeper and get some of those cracks out. I sanded all the way from 220 up till the 3000 in the kit. And that's just to restore the lens. If you're wanting to go deeper and add the halos, there's a few more things. So you're gonna need a set of halos. I used for my build the 80mm set for my GX build. These are about 20 bucks a pair on Amazon. I paid 40 bucks for both headlights. A little bit of wire or glue to attach the halos to your housing. A little bit of paint, whatever your color choice for painting the housing. And then some new headlight gasket to reseal your headlights once you have everything done, and you can put them back together with some new gasket so that they don't leak. All right, you guys, so the first step, what we're gonna do is separate the lens from the housing, then we can work on the lens separately and the housing separately with the halos and painting that housing there. And so first off, what you wanna do is remove all of the bulbs out of it. You don't want those bulbs in there going in the oven. The second thing you wanna do is remove 4 screws that are holding the housing to the lens. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and you want to take those out. There we got those 4 screws out. Now we are ready to put this in the oven. For this next step, we're going to want to bake it in the oven. So preheat your oven to 225 degrees. We're going to throw the lens in there for about 7 to 10 minutes, probably closer to 10 minutes. We're gonna pull it out of the oven. We've got a set of gloves and we're gonna begin to kind of working at it and pulling it apart. There's some little tabs here we're gonna have to unclip and stick a flat screwdriver in that little crack and we'll begin to work it apart here. All right, just got this bad boy out of the oven. We're gonna start digging into it now. So these are some of those tabs you wanna get it out of. There we go, you can see it starting to separate there. I'm just gonna start working at that. There, got it by this corner here. There's another tab on top. Gotta get here. Yes. Great, looking good. Yeah, looking good. Nice and easy, you don't want to break anything. Before you know it. Yeah, separation. There. All right, now that we've got the housing and the lens separated, I've gone ahead and just removed this little lens cover that was on the Signal. It was melted and broken, so I'm just gonna get rid of that. So I just removed that, and that's really all you're gonna need from the housing until a little bit later once we get to wiring up the halo. So you can set that aside. And then we're gonna start working on these 2 parts. There's 2 parts in here. There's the lens and there's actually a reflector inside here that we're gonna take out. There's 2 screws in this reflector, so you can go ahead and remove those. Once those 2 screws are out, you should be able to start removing the reflector. It might get caught up on a little bit of that sealant and glue. You just kind of slowly wiggle it out. So there you can see we've got the reflector that's taken out as well as the lens. The reflector is in really good shape actually. There's no damage to that. So that's pretty much ready to paint. And then you have the lens, which is where we need to put a bunch of our elbow grease into. Mine is yellowed and it's got cracks. And so we're going to address that as best as we can and try to restore it. We're gonna start by sealing up any of the cracks that are going all the way through the plastic. And so we'll kind of open those up just really gently, and I'm gonna put a little bit of super glue in there just to help seal it. And then we're gonna start sanding. I'm gonna start at probably 220 and sand until I get most of these surface spider cracks out. If you take your time, you should be able to get most of them out. This lens is actually pretty thick, and so it gives you a little bit to sand through. Obviously, those cracks that go all the way through the plastic they're there for good. But once we get most of those out with 220, then we'll start working our way up with the grits, all the way to probably about a 3,000 wet sand. And then we'll use our restoration kit with the ceramic coating, and they will be pristine. All right, you guys, we have the first sand done on this lens. I went all the way down to 150 grit with the palm sander. Some of the cracks were kind of deep in there, so I just really went for it with 150 grit, got most of them out, and then sanded all the way up through the grits, all the way to 1500 wet sand, and we're looking pretty good. You can see it's still hazy there because it's just a sanded finish, but now this Cerakote ceramic headlight kit will take us the rest of the way. It's got 2,000 and 3,000 grit wet sand in it. And then it also has the final ceramic coating, which is what's gonna get us that pristine clear finish. So let's go ahead and get into this. I'm sure it's gonna give us fantastic results. All right, guys, the final step for this lens is to finish with the ceramic coat. And this is where this hazy lens becomes clear. So we've got the final ceramic clear coat for it and a set of gloves. I already did the other lens, and I know that this stuff smells super strong and is probably not great for your skin. So I'd recommend using gloves. Use at your own risk. Here we go. Gloves are on. We're gonna open our package here, the clear coating. Make sure that there's no water or anything on there. It says this all in the instructions. I'd recommend opening it away from your nose. It is very strong smelling. All right, watch this. Make sure you get all of the spots. You'll know for sure if you miss any. And would you look at that? That, my friend, is extremely clear. It's probably about as clear as you're gonna get an old lens like this. Super excited about that. You gotta wait for that to dry. And so while that is drying, we are gonna go ahead and finish the halos on the reflector. All right, so we've got the halos. Now we're just gonna work on fitting those into the reflectors here. They come with a couple little tabs on the back of the halos. You're not gonna need those. I just used a set of side cutters and I cut those flush. And then we're gonna go on and rough fit these to the reflectors. Where the electrical wires come off of the halos, you're gonna have to notch your reflector. I would recommend using like a Dremel or something of the like. Otherwise, you're gonna end up cracking it if you use like side cutters or something. These are pretty brittle. So make a little notch for your electrical wires, and then we're gonna go through and drill a few holes so that we can take and wrap the wire around the reflector and the halo. So the wire will go right around that part there. So let's do that. All right, so we have our reflector prepped. We have the notches cut for all of the electrical pigtails. We've got holes drilled to wire the actual halo to the reflector. The only other thing to do is just to pop off this reflector which is just friction fit in there. So you can carefully pop that out like that. Clean it up, and then you're good to spray it whatever color you want your reflector to be. I've got this, it's this color called Carbon Mist. It's kind of like a metallic gray that I think looks pretty cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and spray that, and then we can go ahead and fix all of the halos to the reflector once that is dried and hardened. All right guys, onto the halos in the, what were reflectors, but are now not really reflectors anymore. And so now we get to take and fasten them in there. So we need our halos, that little bit of wire, a couple snips and little pliers. And I'm actually using a hot glue gun with some of the, this is like the yellow, super strong hot glue. And I'm just using that to kind of sit them in place. I found that if I can just put them in place where they'll dry and sit really quickly, it makes it a little bit easier to get the wiring and everything all done. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna glue these in place now with the hot glue, and then we're gonna get to wiring them in. So let's go for it. All right, you guys, there we've got it. The halos are attached to the bezel. Now we just gotta sort all the wiring in the back and ready to put this thing back together here. One little tip as you're finishing up, if you are using hot glue tends to be stringy, and so make sure you get any little strings off of your bezels and everything, because as soon as you put the lights back in here, any little strings will show up like mad in your headlights. So make sure you get that. Next, we're gonna move into wiring up the back of the lights. This part isn't too bad. You can just plug these tails back in. I'm just going to wire them in the back here, and then I'll show you close up how I have them all tucked in here. All right, so we've got a reflector back on the side of the bezel. Now we can put that back in the lens. I'm almost ready to put the housing back together. All right, so now we've got to drill a little hole right in here so that we have a little passage for all of these cables to go through, and we can put them back together, and that is about it. Next, what we've got to do is just prep the wires on the lens so that we can put them through here. We're going to put a little bit of new gasket on the housing. We can put them together just roughly, put them back in the oven, and then we're going to seal this up. We're going to take the housing, make sure you clean anything out of there. Now we're going to take and put a little bit of gasket all the way around the edge here, just to kind of fill the void again. So you're not going to need a whole lot because there's already still some of that rubber gasket in there, but just enough to make sure that it seals nicely. So I'm going to start on the bottom edge, and I'm just going to stretch it in this little crack there in the gap. And just overlap them a little bit. So now we're going to take and just roughly mate them up. We're going to snake our wires through the housing, put them in the oven. All right, so we've got the housing and the body and the lens. Everything is all mocked up with our gasket in there. They're kind of just lined up. You won't be able to squish it all the way back together until it's heated up. So we're going to go ahead, preheat the oven to 225 again. Probably put it in there for about 10 minutes. And then using a set of gloves, and on some of these areas a set of channel locks helps out, or a set of pliers, to just be able to squeeze these and start putting some pressure back together. And that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and get that finished off. All right guys, this is fresh out of the oven, so it's hot to the touch still, so we're going to start squeezing this together. You see, oh yeah, even just with the hand it starts to put together. So I'm going to use the channel locks and start just gently, because you don't want to crack the plastic, but just gently getting it all in place. relatively straightforward. Make sure all of these tabs are locked into place. Then we're gonna take, while it's still hot, we're gonna take these 4 screws and try to get them in as well. And that should be the final step to closing it up. And just like that, we have the light put back together. And that is, the bulk of the work is completely done. The only thing to do is just finish the wiring for the halos and we're finished. So let's take a look into that too. Now this last part, there's a couple different options that you can do. With these halos that I got, these have both amber and white lights in them. So you can wire them up in different ways. There's leads, there's the black leads, which are ground, red leads, which are power for the white color, and yellow, which is power for the amber color. So I'm actually just gonna take and wire the ground straight into this common ground, and I'm gonna just wire the white LED in the halo into these indicator globes on the side, so that all the white bulbs will run together. All right, so I have both grounds wired into that ground there. So for temporary wiring, here's a trick as well, because I don't know what I want to do long term yet. Here's a little trick, is I'm going to actually take both of these wires, leave them long, jumper them together with a crimp. So that will link both of those lines. It also hides the end of that, so there's no open wiring there. And then I am going to use a little, I know these are cheating and not really for permanent installation, but I'm going to use one of these little guys, and I'm going to link one of these red wires to this green on those indicator globes, and that will link both halos together. And those will link together. That's it. So we've got our light put back together, we've got it fully restored, the lens is awesome, we've got the halos added, it's looking great. Now the last thing is we got to put the bulbs back in. I don't want to put the regular bulbs back in. I'm going to do a full LED upgrade. I've got these kits here from Terraloom Industries. We're going to do low beam, high beam, signals, as well as the indicators on the sides. It's full LED upgrade. So let's put those in. So here, let's start with the H11, which you've got your light and then your little control box and then your plug and play connector. Here we go. Here's low beam. Here's the high beam, which is the 9005. Then we've got our signal. And then we've got our 2 T10 indicators. And the second one. Lastly, the kit comes with these little pieces of sticky tape to stick on these little boxes. So I just take and wipe off the bottom here or wherever you want to stick them. Let's stick this one right on the bottom there. There we go. Well guys, that brings us to the end of this headlight revamp video. For less than $100, we took our old worn out headlights and turned them into this. By no means are they pristine, brand new, because they're still 15-plus-year-old headlights that these ones are. But we got, restored lenses, so that's gonna give us added visibility. We got halos added, we painted the bezels in there. It's gonna modernize the look a whole lot, as well as just improve lighting. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stoked to see you in the next video.